Hello, ladies. Welcome to our show tonight. I have a very special guest with me. This is Mrs. Sarah Meija. You want to say hi?
Hi.
There she is. Not many of you know her, so I'm really excited to have her on the show tonight. She is married to Brother Bruce Meija, who is the evangelist out of Faithful Word Baptist, and they are Faithful Word Baptist Church of LA, and they're doing a great job there. But she was raised in a Christian home, and I really wanted to go over the subject that we're going to be going over tonight because I think it's really important to give encouragement to those of you that are raising children and just kind of show you a lot of the benefits of being raised the way that both of us were. We were both raised in Christian homes. She was raised in a pastor's home, though, which is a little different than even the way I was raised. So go ahead, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you and your family and everything.
So I'm Sarah Meija, and like she said, my husband is Bruce Meija, and I have two children. Brucey Jr. is 2, and then I have a little girl, Kyla, and she's 1, and we're expecting our third in October. Um, but I come from a family of 10, so there were 8 of us children, um, 5 boys and 3 girls, and to date, all of us are serving the Lord. 3 of us are married to godly spouses. Um, and I have, I maybe I'm partial, but I feel like I have the godliest parents I know. I always told my mom that if I was half the lady she was, then I'd be really happy. And I told my dad that if I I just like, or I always prayed that I would marry someone like my dad. And I think I did. Like, they don't have the same personality, but they have like the same passion for the Lord and the same vision and passion for souls. So, um, anyway, that's so. And I grew up I grew up in a pastor's home as well. And I wanted to say this, I guess, before we got into everything, but like as a side note, if you didn't come from this type of home, it's not something to like lament over. My parents were both from unsaved homes, and they were both from divorced homes. When they were, I think both of them when they were around 5 years old, and they both grew up kind of in like difficult situations. They got saved. My mom got saved when she was like middle of her teens, and then my dad right before he became a young adult. But they decided that they wanted to give their children something that they didn't have, and I think they did a really good job at giving that to us, just like a godly heritage. But there's a verse, and I would say this kind of um, sums up my life, I guess. In Psalm 16:6, it says, "The lines are fallen unto me in pleasant places, yea, I have a goodly heritage." So I really thank God for just the blessing of growing up in a Christian home. And I know it's a privilege, and I know everyone doesn't have that privilege. And there's no such thing as a perfect family. I say I have like the best family, or the best parents I know, but obviously there's no such thing as a perfect family. And my parents never tried to portray that we were a perfect family, and I mean, everyone knows that we weren't. But and they didn't give us unrealistic expectations like you have to be this or you have to be that. But they did determine that their homes would be different than they grew up, and they wanted to obviously have a Christian home. Um, but we did have high standards, and they did expect us to, be a good example and everything like that. Um, but I don't know how much I should keep talking, or you can interject.
Yeah,
But
I
I
don't want
just
to
kind
like
of talk.
interrupt you when you're going, but I was going to ask you about growing up in a pastor's home. I didn't have this type of pressure on me. Um, it's funny because even though I wasn't in a pastor's home, I still remember when I had friends growing up. They would oftentimes tell me, they would be like, sometimes being your friend is a pain because my mom will always compare me to you, and she'll always be like, why can't you be like Cassie Cutler? Why can't you be good like her? Why can't you respect me like her? And I had my faults. I sassed my mom too many times. I was disobedient at times. I had my faults, but I really did try to honor my parents and a lot that I did. But do you feel like growing up in a pastor's home that there was more of a spotlight on you guys, or you were scrutinized more, I guess? Do you feel like you were scrutinized more by other people?
Yes, and I guess, I mean, that kind of comes naturally. And of course, the pastor is supposed to like have his family in order. But yeah, I mean, I don't feel
Right.
like we had like this constant, like, well, you're the pastor's kid, so you should. Like, I don't feel like church family like put this huge pressure on us. But at the same time, I mean, I do remember, I'm trying to remember, I know there was an instance where they're like, oh, you're the pastor's daughter, you shouldn't say that, or, whatever. But I mean, yeah, I guess there is maybe some pressure. And of course, like our dad always told us, like, you're an example. And it wasn't like you're an example because you're representing me, but our family is like representing the Lord.
Right.
But I didn't feel like this huge responsibility or something. But at the same time, it was like, we are the pastor family and we do need to set a good example. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. I try to tell my children we don't do these things because we are a pastor's family. We do these things because we're Christians and because we love
Right.
the Lord, and we want to serve him. And that's kind of I've never played the whole pastor's family kid card. Now there is I think Pastor Anderson it was at your church. He just preached and he was talking about the benefits of being a pastor's kid. And I
Right.
really liked that because our kids do get a lot of benefits. They get to travel. They get to go places with their dad that other kids maybe, don't get to. So there are benefits to it and perks to it. So I guess, there is a responsibility there somewhat. So
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. My mom, both of our parents, they both like showed us that it was like an honor and a privilege to be the pastor's family. It was an honor and privilege to serve the Lord, and we get to be the ones who get to minister to these people. So it was like realizing that, yeah, it is a privilege. And we did have a ton of blessings, which, yeah, Pastor Anderson talked about it, but a ton of blessings that other people didn't get. We got to go out with missionaries and meet pastors and go on trips and, I mean, just be in the pastor's home. So yeah, it's definitely a blessing. But I never felt like it was like this burden. I know there's like I've heard different things from different people or different pastors' kids, like, oh, it was so terrible or whatever, it was so hard or whatever. But I don't know, our parents didn't create that type of atmosphere like, well, you're the pastor's kid, so you better, or whatever, you know what I mean?
I love that. I absolutely love that because I really do feel like it's an honor being in the ministry and I love it. And from the time
Yeah.
I was little, I loved church. I wanted to be in church. I wanted to marry a pastor so I could just be in church. And my daughter Abby was talking the other day about how when we walked into the church, she's like, oh, this just feels like our second home. But she
Yes.
wasn't saying it like in a bad way because I think my kids genuinely love church. They love being in the ministry. And
Yeah.
but like you said, I've seen other kids that hate it. And I really think it has to do with the parents and how they portray it to their children because this
Right.
applies even to people that aren't pastors' kids or aren't married to a pastor. This applies to Christian people. If you're like, oh, we have to go to church, and let's go to
Or
church.
the
Come out.
people at church this or the people at
Yeah,
church that, or
yes, then that's going to rub off on your children. But if you're like, yes, we get to go to church today. It's my favorite day of the week. Let's get ready. And you're all excited. That's really going to transfer to your kids. So that's a huge thing to remember as a parent. So
definitely. And I think I might mention this later, but I just lost what I was going to say. Pregnancy brain. Anyway, maybe I should move on.
well, just think of it. You could interject if you think of it again. So
Okay.
but yeah, and I do like what you said about the perfect family too, because I have met many people that try to portray like they are the perfect family and come to find out they have more problems than any other family I've ever met. So I do not try to portray us as being perfect. I tell my church people all the time, my kids are going to mess up, try to show them some grace. They're not going to be perfect. They're just kids. They're learning. So I do like that you said that about your parents. They
Oh, I
seem,
think I know what I was going to say.
go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I think one thing too, as far as pastors are concerned, but I think this could go for anybody, just serving the Lord, is that our parents we serve the Lord together as a family, which I really like about the churches that are like ours, like everyone goes soul winning together and we have church
Mhm.
all together. But so it wasn't like dad and mom left or mom left and she was doing her thing and dad just disappeared and he was just gone all the time. It was like, if we were going to do something, I mean, whether it was like we were building a new building, so everyone was going to go up and we were going to clean and work on the new building, or if it was like some sort of ministry opportunity that we had, like whatever it was like we were doing it as a family. It wasn't like the parents had their ministry, or my dad was the pastor and the ministry was there. Like the ministry was our life and serving God was our life. There was like no separation there.
Yeah, I like that. That's very, very good. And we're the same way with our children. We clean the church as a family.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, down to the littlest thing. I mean, we're going to go to the office. Okay, you want to come with me and do your homework
Yeah,
over there? Whatever. Just we were always doing everything together as a family and just serving the Lord together.
that's awesome. Yep. So I like the verse that you said, Proverbs 22:60, about training up a child. Do you want to kind of touch on that? How did your parents implement that in your life? The train up a child verse. You can go ahead and go back too if you want.
Oh yeah, sure. So it's Proverbs 22:6. I put 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. Um, I guess just creating, and I think maybe I put this further down too, but like I said, kind of like what I said with ministry, but just our home, like they created a spiritual atmosphere. And again, it wasn't like church was our spiritual time, but it was, when they read their Bible, they'd show us what they read that day. Or if there was a prayer request, we prayed together as family and we saw prayer requests answered together as a family. So, we could just see God working in our lives or working in our family, down to the littlest things. And my husband, I think he shared this, but this is maybe something that's silly, but for a little kid, it's a big deal. Like one time, one of my siblings was like, Mom, I really want coconuts, like the fresh coconuts. And my mom's like, well, I don't have money to buy coconuts. You better go ahead and pray for that. But that was like the answer, like, okay, we'll pray for it. So then, so they prayed for it, and literally like a couple of hours later, one of our church members came to the door, knocked on the door, and like brought some coconuts to the house.
Aww.
But I mean, even the littlest things, it was like, okay, we had an atmosphere in our home of, talking about God's word and praying for everything. My parents, we had family altar, not every day because that's not practical, but we had, well, they call it family altar, where we'd read the Bible together, we'd share blessings together, we'd share prayer requests together. If there was like maybe a special, like a conference or something like that at our church where there were a lot of preachers, we get together and talk about what we learned and, what things that we were going to implement into our lives. I mean, I guess there's like a million things that I could say that they did, but they just created like a spiritual atmosphere. And obviously that flows from them walking with God and then teaching us to as well, be in God's word and be in prayer and just live a life that pleases the Lord. But about that verse, it says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And I feel like that's a promise that if we train our children, that they won't depart from it. But I guess there's so many things that I could talk about that my parents did. I don't know if I should keep going or what.
No, it's fine. I'd like to hear about a lot of it. And my husband preached last night. He preached a really good sermon. If you want to look it up, for all you ladies that are listening, it's about fathers provoking not your children to wrath. And one thing that we've noticed with a lot of families when they're raising children is like they think that they have a checklist. Obviously the Bible is our guideline and stuff, but it's like they think that if they go down, they're going to raise perfect kids. And it's almost like they're not instilling in them a love for doing this stuff. And so what you have is a lot of children growing up, in my generation especially, and I'm seeing them now, they've gone trendy, they're dropping standards, they're dropping, they grow up bitter that they weren't able to go to movie theaters or they weren't able to wear pants if they were girls. And they grow up acting like they missed out on all this stuff. And it was because their parents were like, well, you have to do this because the school says it, or you have to do this because this is what our pastor believes. And they didn't really instill in them a genuine love. And I love it that you're talking about how your parents, made things fun and enjoyable, and it was a spiritual atmosphere. It wasn't like some overbearing, we have to